Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. The words echoed in Jada's mind as she stood in front of her luxurious penthouse window, gazing out over the shimmering skyline of Manhattan. Once, this city had felt like her kingdom. She had everything a woman could desire: wealth, beauty, a loving husband who was a billionaire, and a life that seemed too perfect to be real. But perfection is often an illusion, and Jada had learned that the hard way. The glistening view outside her window now felt like a distant memory, one she could never return to. It was only a few months ago that she had been the queen of this life, attending high-profile parties, traveling the world, and basking in the adoration of those around her. But now, everything was different. The life she had built with her husband, Daniel, had crumbled in the wake of betrayal. He had been everything she thought she needed, until he wasn't. The first sign that something was wrong came when Daniel started to come home late, his once warm smile now replaced with a cold indifference. Then came the late-night phone calls, the cryptic texts, and the secrets that seemed to pile up one after another. She didn't want to believe it at first. She wanted to hold on to the dream. But the truth hit harder than she could have ever imagined. She had discovered the affair. Her world shattered in an instant. The man she had loved, the father of her future children, was not the person she thought he was. The day they went to court for their divorce, she felt like she was walking through a fog. Everything had lost its color, its meaning. Daniel had been ruthless, his words cutting deeper than any knife ever could. He didn't even flinch when she told him how much he had hurt her. To him, it was just another business transaction, one that had no emotional attachment. And so, with nothing left but her name, Jada walked away. She left the penthouse, left the life she had built, and walked out into a world that now seemed as cold and indifferent as her ex-husband. But fate, as it always does, had other plans for her. Just when she thought she had lost everything, she met a stranger. He stood in front of her, his gaze piercing through the layers of sorrow she had wrapped around herself. His voice was soft but commanding, a question that stopped her in her tracks. "Are you Jada?" The words hung in the air, and for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. This was the beginning of something new, something unexpected. But what could this stranger possibly want with her? Could he be the key to her redemption, to the new life she was so desperately searching for? Or was this yet another twist in the cruel game of fate that had already taken so much from her? Jada didn't know the answer, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life was about to change forever. I'm not sure what I expected when I met the stranger, but it wasn't the warmth that radiated from him, despite the fact that I was a total stranger to him. His eyes were full of mystery, but there was something kind behind them. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the nerves that had risen in my chest. I had just come from the lowest point in my life. The streets were cold and unforgiving, and the thought of someone approaching me with kindness felt like a cruel joke. My world had felt like it was crumbling for so long that I almost didn't know how to trust anything anymore. But there he was, standing in front of me. "Are you Jada?" he asked again, his voice breaking through my thoughts. I swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes," I said softly, unsure of where this conversation would lead. The man smiled slightly, as if something about my response brought him relief. "I thought it was you," he said, his voice steady and calm, yet full of curiosity. "I'm Jack. I've heard a lot about you." My mind raced. How could he have heard of me? I wasn't anyone special anymore. I was just a woman who had lost everything. But Jack didn't seem to care about that. He wasn't looking at me with pity, like most people did when they saw me on the streets. He was looking at me like I was someone worth knowing. I wanted to pull away, to run from him, but something told me that he wasn't like the others. There was something genuine about him, something that made me wonder if fate had brought him into my life for a reason. What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Jack didn't seem fazed by my wariness. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he said simply, his gaze softening. "I know what you've been through. You don't have to do this alone." His words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I'd been craving kindness, even from someone I didn't know. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that this was all too good to be true. "How do you know what I've been through?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step closer to me, as if to make sure I understood the sincerity in his words. "Let's just say I know what it's like to lose everything," he said quietly. "And I know that it's possible to rebuild, to rise again." I felt a lump form in my throat as his words sunk in. Was he trying to tell me that I could find my way back? That there was still hope for me, even after everything I had lost? It seemed impossible, but I wanted to believe him. For the first time in a long time, a flicker of hope began to spark inside me. What do you need me to do? I asked, my voice stronger now, though it still trembled slightly. Jack smiled again, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt seen. Nothing yet, he said softly. But I'd like to offer you a chance. A chance to start over. You deserve it. His words felt like a lifeline. I wasn't sure what this chance would look like, or if I was ready to take it. But for the first time since my world had come crashing down, I felt like I wasn't alone. I could still rebuild. I could still rise. I didn't know where this path would lead, or if I was making a mistake by trusting Jack, but in that moment, I was willing to take the first step towards something better. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be whole again. I spent the next few days and a daze, trying to wrap my head around everything Jack had said. I hadn't expected a stranger to offer me a chance to rebuild my life. But there was something in his words that made me wonder if he saw more in me than I saw in myself. I had always been the type to push my emotions aside, to hide behind the walls I had built around myself. I had convinced myself that I didn't need anyone. But Jack's offer, his kindness, made me question that belief. Maybe I wasn't as strong as I had thought. Maybe, just maybe, I needed help. The morning after our conversation, Jack showed up at the small, run-down apartment where I was staying. I had never felt more out of place. The place was a far cry from the penthouse I once called home. The walls were cracked, the furniture old and worn. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. As soon as he stepped inside, Jack looked around, his eyes scanning the room with a mix of curiosity and concern. This place, he started, then hesitated, unsure of how to phrase it. It's not much, but it's home for now, I said quickly, not wanting to dwell on the obvious. Jack smiled, though there was a trace of sadness in his expression. You deserve more than this, he said quietly. I wasn't sure what to say. I had once thought I deserved everything. The perfect life, the perfect marriage. But it had all fallen apart, and now I was left with nothing. I don't know how to start over. I confessed, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I don't know what to do next. Jack placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. You don't have to have it all figured out right now, he said. We can take it one step at a time. I can help you. His words were simple, but they carried so much weight. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone. Jack offered to help me find work, but I was hesitant. What could someone like me, someone who had been so deeply hurt, possibly offer? Still, Jack insisted. You've got more to offer than you realize, Jada. Don't sell yourself short. His confidence in me made me feel something I hadn't felt in months, hope. So I agreed. I decided to take the first step, though it felt like a giant leap. I would try. Jack made some calls, and within a few days, I had an interview at a small but well-respected nonprofit organization. The job was far from glamorous, but it was a start. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this new chapter, but I knew I had to try. As I prepared for the interview, I found myself questioning everything. What if I wasn't good enough? What if I failed? But then I thought about everything I had already endured. I had survived betrayal, heartache, and the loss of everything I once held dear. I could do this. I had to. The day of the interview, I wore my best outfit, one I had managed to buy on sale months ago before everything fell apart. It wasn't much, but it made me feel like I was taking control of my life again. When I walked into the office, I was nervous, but I reminded myself that this was my opportunity. This was the first step toward building a new life. The interview went well, much better than I had expected. By the end of it, they told me they would get back to me soon. As I left the building, I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't much, but it was something. I had taken control of my future, even if just a little. It felt like the first victory I had in a long time. Jack was waiting for me outside the building, and when he saw my smile, he raised an eyebrow. How did it go? He asked. I think I got the job, I said, the excitement bubbling up in my chest. Jack grinned, his eyes lighting up with pride. I knew you could do it, he said. This is just the beginning, Jada. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe him. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of new beginnings and unexpected challenges. Jada threw herself into her new job at the nonprofit, determined to prove that she was more than just the woman who had lost everything. She woke up each morning with a sense of purpose, something she hadn't felt in a long time. The work was demanding, but it was rewarding in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was helping people, making a difference, and slowly, but surely, finding pieces of herself she had long buried. It wasn't easy. Some days, the weight of her past would resurface, and she would find herself overwhelmed by the memories of what she had lost. The image of her former life, the penthouse, the designer clothes, the luxurious dinners, haunted her, reminding her of the world she once belonged to. But then she would think of the people she was helping at the nonprofit, the people who needed her, and that would push her forward. As the weeks went by, Jack became a constant presence in her life. They spent time together outside of work, talking about everything and nothing. He was kind, patient, and understanding, always encouraging her to keep going. Jada found herself looking forward to their conversations, to the moments of peace he brought into her otherwise chaotic world. But despite the growing connection between them, Jada was still wary. She had been hurt before, and the fear of opening up again gnawed at her. She didn't want to trust someone, only to have her heart broken once more. But Jack was different. He never pushed her, never rushed her. He was just there, supporting her in ways that made her feel seen, made her feel worthy. One afternoon, Jack invited her to a small cafe near the water. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything, and the air was cool and crisp. It was the perfect moment, and Jada could feel the tension in her chest slowly easing as she sat across from him. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Jack said, his voice soft but serious. Jada raised an eyebrow. "About what?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "About you," he said simply. "About how strong you are. You've been through so much, and yet, you keep pushing forward. I admire that." Jada looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not from someone like Jack. She had spent so much of her life being overlooked, dismissed, that hearing words like these felt foreign. "You're not the person you were when we first met," Jack continued, his voice gentle but firm. "I can see it in your eyes. You're changing. You're growing." Jada swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "I don't know if I believe that," she said quietly. "I don't feel like I'm changing. I just feel lost." Jack reached across the table, his hand resting on hers, warm and steady. "It's okay to feel lost," he said. "What matters is that you're still moving forward, even when it feels like you can't. You're not alone, Jada." For a moment, Jada just sat there, letting his words sink in. She had been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that she hadn't allowed herself to think about the future, about what came next. But now, in this moment, with Jack's hand gently holding hers, she felt a flicker of something. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was a new beginning. She wasn't sure, but for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that things could get better. As the evening went on, they talked about their pasts, their dreams, and everything in between. It felt easy, natural, like they had known each other for years instead of just a few short months. For the first time, Jada didn't feel like she was pretending to be someone else. She felt like she could finally be herself, with no walls, no masks. It was liberating. As they walked along the water's edge later that evening, Jada found herself smiling. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of it. Jack had shown her that there was still goodness in the world, still beauty to be found, even after all the pain. And maybe, just maybe, there was a future waiting for her, one where she could finally embrace her own strength, her own power. A future where she could rise, not just for herself, but for everyone who needed her. The days continued to pass, and with each one, Jada felt a little more like herself again. The job at the nonprofit had become more than just a distraction. It had become a purpose. She was contributing to something larger than herself, helping others who had been through their own struggles. The work wasn't easy, but it brought her a sense of fulfillment that she hadn't felt in years. Jack remained a steady presence in her life, but now, he was more than just a mentor. He was a friend, someone she could count on when everything else seemed uncertain. They had shared countless conversations, but there was something different about the way he looked at her now. It wasn't just admiration for her strength. It was something deeper, something unspoken. Jada could feel the shift, but she wasn't ready to confront it. She still wasn't sure what it meant, or if she was ready to let herself feel that way again. But one evening, after a long day at work, Jack invited her to dinner. It wasn't anything extravagant. Just a quiet meal at a small Italian restaurant in the city, the kind that had a cozy atmosphere, dim lighting, and the sound of soft music in the background. They sat at a corner table, away from the bustle of the restaurant, where the flickering candlelight cast soft shadows on their faces. As they sipped wine and shared stories, Jada felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in a long time. It was the first time in what felt like ages that she wasn't worried about the past, or what the future might hold. For that one evening, she could simply be present, enjoying the company of someone who cared. As they finished their meal, Jack leaned back in his chair, his eyes studying her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "Jada," he said softly, his voice low and serious. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. About us." Jada's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure how to respond. The words she had been avoiding, the feelings she had been too afraid to acknowledge, were suddenly on the table. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her emotions in check. "Jack, I don't know what you mean," she said quietly, her voice trembling. Jack smiled, but there was a tenderness in his gaze that made her heart ache. "I think you do," he said softly. "I think you've known all along. You're not the only one who's been through a lot, Jada. We're both trying to heal, to find our way back to ourselves. And I can't help but feel that we're stronger together." Jada felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't ready for this, not yet. She wasn't sure if she could let someone in again, not after everything she had been through. But Jack wasn't asking for anything more than honesty. He wasn't rushing her, wasn't pushing her to make a decision. He was just there, waiting for her to be ready. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to know right now," he said. "All I'm asking is that you don't shut me out. Let me be here for you, however you need me to be." The warmth of his touch was enough to break down the walls Jada had spent so long building. She felt the weight of everything she had been carrying for so long. Her fear, her pain, her doubts, begin to lift. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like she had to do everything on her own. She looked into Jack's eyes and saw something there that made her believe that, maybe, just maybe, she could take a chance. She could take a step forward. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of trusting again." Jack squeezed her hand gently, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know," he said softly, "but you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be scared anymore." Jada felt a tear slip down her cheek. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding back until that moment. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it was time to let go of the past, to stop running from the possibility of happiness. Maybe it was time to trust again. The days after that dinner with Jack felt like a slow, steady climb towards something she had almost given up on. For the first time in a long while, Jada allowed herself to think about the future, not just survive the present. She woke up each morning with a sense of purpose, knowing she was working towards something better, but the fear still lingered, a quiet reminder that the past was never far behind. Yet, every time she saw Jack, something inside her shifted. He wasn't just a reminder of the kindness she had been missing. He was a constant in her life, someone who cared for her not because he had to, but because he genuinely saw her. And for someone who had been abandoned by those she loved most, that was a rare gift. One Saturday, after a particularly exhausting week at work, Jada met Jack at a small park in the city. She had asked him to meet her there, needing a moment of peace, away from the noise of the world. When she arrived, Jack was already sitting on a bench, his head tilted slightly upward as he gazed at the clouds. He looked peaceful, almost lost in thought, and for a moment, Jada hesitated. She wasn't sure if she was ready to confront the feelings swirling inside her, but seeing him there, calm and steady, gave her the courage to move forward. "Hey," she said softly, approaching him. Jack turned to look at her, a soft smile spreading across his face. "Hey, Jada," he replied, his voice warm. "You okay?" Jada sat down beside him, the cool breeze tugging at her hair. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months pressing on her chest. I'm trying to be," she said. "Some days are better than others." Jack nodded, his expression understanding. "I get it," he said gently. "But you're doing more than just surviving. You're living again, Jada. You're finding your way back. She looked at him, surprised by the depth of his words. He was right. She had been surviving, pushing through each day without truly allowing herself to feel. But now, with Jack by her side, she felt the stirrings of something more. I don't know if I'm ready for everything, she admitted. I'm still scared, Jack. Jack turned to face her, his eyes locking onto hers with a kind of intensity that made her heart race. You don't have to be ready for everything right now, he said, his voice steady. You just have to be ready for today, for this moment. Jada's breath caught in her throat. She had spent so long focusing on the past, on the betrayal, on the pain, that she had forgotten what it was like to simply be in the present, to allow herself to feel without the weight of everything that had come before. Jack's words were like a lifeline, pulling her out of the darkness. I'm scared of trusting again, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know how to open up. Jack reached out, his hand gently resting on hers. I'm not asking you to forget the past, he said. But I'm here now, Jada. I won't hurt you. I won't leave. His words were a balm to her weary soul. She had been so focused on protecting herself from the hurt that she had forgotten how to let someone in. But Jack wasn't asking for everything at once. He was simply offering her his presence, his support, and that was enough for now. I don't know what this is, Jack, she whispered, her eyes searching his face. I don't know if I can trust again. Jack smiled softly, his thumb brushing across her hand. You don't have to have all the answers, he said. I don't need you to trust me completely right now. I just need you to trust yourself. Trust that you deserve happiness, that you deserve love, and that you don't have to go through this alone. Jada's heart swelled with emotion. She hadn't realized how much she had been carrying until that moment, how much she had been holding back. Jack wasn't just offering her a second chance at love, he was offering her a chance to believe in herself again. For the first time in so long, Jada allowed herself to lean into the warmth of his touch, to let go of the fear and the doubt. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to take a chance. Okay, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Okay. Jack squeezed her hand gently, his smile soft and understanding. And in that moment, Jada knew that she was ready to move forward, not because she had it all figured out, but because she was no longer alone. Together, they could face whatever the future held. As the weeks passed, Jada began to feel a transformation taking place within herself. She was no longer just surviving. She was living. The weight of her past, the hurt and betrayal that had defined so much of her life, was beginning to loosen its grip. The nonprofit work, though challenging, gave her a sense of purpose, something she had desperately needed. Each day, she felt herself growing stronger, more confident, more capable of facing whatever came next. Jack continued to be a steady presence in her life, but now their connection had shifted. It was no longer just about support or friendship. It was something deeper, something real. Jada still couldn't bring herself to fully admit it, but she felt it. She couldn't deny the growing attraction she felt for him, the warmth that spread through her every time they were together. But still, she was cautious. The fear of opening herself up again, of trusting someone with her heart, loomed over her like a shadow. Yet, every time she thought about the possibility of a future with Jack, the fear seemed a little less daunting. She started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could let herself feel again. One evening, after another busy day at work, Jada met Jack at the same small cafe by the water where they had shared a quiet dinner weeks ago. She didn't know why she asked him to meet her there, but something about the place felt safe. It had become their spot, a place where they could be themselves without the pressures of the world around them. As she approached the cafe, she saw Jack waiting outside, his hands in his pockets, looking out at the water. When he noticed her, he smiled and waved. There was something so comforting about his smile, something that made her heart race a little faster. Hey Jada, Jack said as she approached. I was beginning to think you weren't going to show up. I wouldn't leave you hanging, Jada replied with a smile, her nerves settling. They walked inside together, the familiar warmth of the cafe wrapping around them like a soft embrace. They sat at their usual table, the one by the window that overlooked the water. As they sipped their drinks, Jada found herself opening up in a way she hadn't expected. You know, she said slowly, when I first met you, I never thought I'd be where I am now. Jack raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He asked, leaning in slightly, his attention fully on her. Jada looked down at her cup, trying to find the right words. I mean, I thought my life was over when everything fell apart. I thought I would never be able to get back to the person I was before. But now, I'm starting to see things differently. I'm starting to realize that maybe I don't have to be defined by what happened to me." Jack's eyes softened, and he reached across the table to gently touch her hand. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," he said quietly. "You've been through more than most people could ever handle, and you're still standing. That says a lot about who you are." Jada smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. "I don't know what the future holds, Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm starting to think that maybe I can finally let go of the past. Maybe I can start to believe in something better." Jack's smile widened, his eyes sparkling with pride. "You've already taken the hardest step," he said. "You've let yourself believe that things can be different." Jada felt a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of the future. She didn't know where it would lead, but she knew she was ready to face it, ready to embrace whatever came next. And with Jack by her side, she felt like she could handle anything. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Jack squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I'm just happy to be here with you." As they sat together in the quiet cafe, the world outside seemed to fade away. For the first time in a long time, Jada felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. As time passed, Jada's life continued to transform in ways she had never imagined possible. The work at the nonprofit, her newfound confidence, and the growing connection with Jack were all slowly healing the scars of her past. It wasn't an easy journey, but with each passing day, she felt more like the woman she had once been, before everything had fallen apart. One quiet evening, as the city lights flickered outside her small apartment, Jada found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She was no longer the woman who had been broken by betrayal, the woman who had once thought she had nothing left. She had built something new, something better. The phone rang, breaking her thoughts. It was Jack. "Hey, how's your day been?" His voice was warm, familiar. Jada smiled as she picked up the phone. "It's been good," she said, walking over to the window. "Just been thinking about how much things have changed. I'm not sure I even recognize my old life anymore." Jack chuckled softly on the other end. "It's funny how things work out like that. You go through the hardest times, and you think you'll never make it through. But then one day, you realize you've come out stronger on the other side." Jada's heart swelled at his words. He always knew how to make her feel like she wasn't alone. "You're right," she said, looking out at the skyline. "I've learned to trust again. Not just in others, but in myself." "That's the most important thing," Jack replied. "You've got to trust yourself before anyone else." His words stayed with her long after they had ended the call. She wasn't sure how she had gotten so lucky to have someone like Jack in her life. He had been there when she needed him most, offering her support and understanding without ever asking for anything in return. And now, they were building something together, something that had the potential to be more than either of them had expected. But there was still a part of Jada that hesitated. She had always been afraid to depend on others, to let herself be vulnerable. The past had taught her to protect her heart at all costs, but Jack had shown her that it was okay to let go, to trust again. She didn't need to carry the weight of her past alone anymore. That night, Jada sat down at her desk, her mind racing with the possibilities of the future. She thought about everything she had learned, about herself, about life, and about love. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer defined her. She had found the strength to rise above it, to embrace the unknown and step into a future that was hers to create. Jack had given her more than just hope. He had given her the courage to believe in herself again. And that was something no one could take away from her. The following weekend, Jack invited her to a charity event he was hosting. It was a formal affair, something far outside the scope of Jada's usual life. She hesitated at first. She wasn't sure if she belonged in that world anymore. But Jack had assured her that this was a night for them to celebrate everything they had achieved together. As Jada stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress, she took a moment to appreciate how far she had come. She wasn't the same woman who had walked away from her old life in despair. She had found her way back to herself, and she was ready to face whatever came next. When they arrived at the event, the room was filled with influential people, but for the first time, Jada didn't feel out of place. She stood confidently beside Jack, her head held high, knowing she had earned her place here just as much as anyone else. Throughout the evening, Jack kept a close eye on her, his presence steady and reassuring. Jada realized that it wasn't just about the event or the people in the room. It was about the journey they had both been on and the future they were now building together. As the night drew to a close, Jack took Jada's hand and led her outside into the cool night air. "You did amazing tonight," he said, smiling at her with pride. Jada smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you." Jack's eyes softened as he looked at her. "You've always had it in you, Jada. You just needed to believe in yourself." And in that moment, Jada knew that the life she had once feared losing was no longer a distant dream. It was hers to create. With Jack by her side, she had everything she needed to build the future she had always wanted. Together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that they were stronger than the challenges they had already overcome. Months passed, and Jada's life continued to unfold in ways she had once only dreamed of. She had settled into a rhythm that felt right, a balance between her work at the nonprofit, her growing relationship with Jack, and the newfound peace she had with herself. No longer was she haunted by the shadows of the past, the weight of betrayal, or the feeling of being lost. With each new day, she stepped further into the life she had fought so hard to rebuild. It wasn't always perfect, but it was hers. One afternoon, as Jada sat at her desk, reviewing the nonprofit's latest financial report, she felt a sense of contentment she hadn't realized she had been missing. She was doing meaningful work, and the people around her respected her for it. She had become a leader in her own right, and the confidence that had once been shattered by betrayal was now an integral part of who she was. Jack had been her rock through all of this, but now, Jada realized something important. It wasn't just his support that had helped her heal, it was her own strength. She had always had it within her. She had just needed someone to remind her of it. Their relationship had grown deeper over time, their bond strengthening as they continued to support each other through their individual journeys. But Jada knew that she had to take the next step on her own, even though Jack would always be by her side. The future, it seemed, was now in her hands. One evening, Jack invited Jada to dinner at a quiet restaurant they had visited a few times before. It was their favorite spot, a small bistro tucked away from the bustling streets. As they sat down at their table, Jack seemed unusually quiet. Jada noticed the look in his eyes, a mix of anticipation and something else, something she couldn't quite place. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft. Jack smiled, though there was a hint of nervousness in his expression. "Everything's more than okay," he said, his hand reaching across the table to gently take hers. "I've been thinking a lot about us, Jada, about what we've built together, and about where we're going." Jada's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she felt a rush of emotions flood through her. Was he thinking about the future in the same way she was? "I've spent a lot of time worrying about the future," Jack continued, "about what comes next for us. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that I want to be with you. Not just today, but for the long haul. You're everything I've been looking for, Jada." Jada's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected him to say it so openly. She had always kept her emotions close, but in that moment, she knew. She knew that she had finally found someone who understood her, who accepted her for who she was. And the fear that had once controlled her heart began to dissolve. "I've always been afraid of trusting again," Jada said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But with you, I feel like I can." Jack squeezed her hand, his gaze soft and reassuring. "You don't have to be afraid, Jada. We're building this together, one step at a time, and I'll always be here to walk with you." Jada smiled, feeling tears well up in her eyes. For so long, she had been afraid of losing herself, of letting someone else in. But with Jack, she felt like she could finally let go of the past and embrace the future. "I want to build this with you," she said softly, her heart swelling with emotion. "I want to see where this takes us." Jack's face lit up, his eyes filled with joy. "You mean it?" he asked, his voice full of hope. Jada nodded, her smile wide. "I mean it." That evening, as they left the restaurant hand in hand, Jada felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. She had found her strength, her voice, and the courage to believe in love again. And with Jack by her side, she knew that together, they could face anything that came their way. The months that followed felt like a dream, one that Jada had never expected to live. She had found a new rhythm in her life, one that was balanced with work, love, and the quiet joys of everyday living. Jack had become more than just a companion. He was her partner, her confidant, the person who had walked beside her through every twist and turn. But even with all the progress she had made, there were still moments when the weight of her past would return. Late one night, as she sat on the couch with Jack, scrolling through her phone, an old news article caught her eye. It was a story about her ex-husband, Daniel. The headline read, "Billionaire CEO's business empire expands despite personal struggles." Jada's heart clenched as she read the article. It talked about how Daniel had continued to build his company, his wealth, and his influence, while his personal life had fallen apart. It was a reminder of the life she had left behind, the man who had once promised her everything and then shattered it all. For a moment, Jada felt a pang of anger, a flash of the pain she had felt when she found out about the affair. She had spent so much time trying to move past it. But reading about Daniel's success made her feel like she was still stuck in that moment of betrayal. Jack, who had been sitting beside her, noticed the change in her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, his voice filled with concern. Jada put the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. "I saw something about Daniel," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Jack didn't say anything at first. He simply took her hand in his, holding it gently. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked. Jada looked at him, her heart heavy with the weight of all the things she had yet to say. "It's just, sometimes I wonder if he's ever thought about me, about what he did to me," she said, her voice breaking. "I see him out there, still succeeding, still building, and I wonder if I was just a stepping stone for him. Like my pain didn't even matter." Jack squeezed her hand tighter, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I don't know what goes on in his mind," he said. "But I do know this. What happened with him does not define you. It doesn't take away from everything you've accomplished. You fought to get where you are, and you're still moving forward. That's what matters." Jada felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had been so focused on Daniel's success, on the life she had lost, that she had forgotten to celebrate the life she had built for herself. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. "You're right," she said softly, looking up at Jack with a new sense of clarity. "I've spent too much time thinking about what I don't have. I need to focus on what I do have. And I have so much to be grateful for." Jack smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "Exactly," he said, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "You've built something amazing, and I'm proud of you, Jada." Jada leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. In that moment, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She had spent so much time searching for answers, for closure, for validation from others. But the only validation she needed now was her own. And as long as she had Jack by her side, she knew she could keep moving forward, embracing the future with confidence. The next day, Jada made a decision. She was going to stop comparing her life to Daniel's. She wasn't going to measure her success by his standards or by the life they had once shared. She was going to define success on her own terms. The first step in that direction came when she was offered a promotion at the nonprofit. It was a role she had worked hard for, one that would require even more responsibility and leadership. But it was a challenge she was ready to take on. As she accepted the promotion, Jada realized that she had come so far from the woman she had once been. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And with Jack by her side, she knew she could face anything that came her way. Together, they had built something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And Jada finally felt like she was living the life she had always deserved. As the weeks turned into months, Jada's life continued to evolve in ways she had once only dreamed of. She had built a new foundation for herself, one made of strength, resilience, and the love she had found in herself and with Jack. The work at the nonprofit had taken on even more meaning for her, as she was now in a leadership role, helping to guide the organization in new directions. She had also started mentoring younger women who had gone through similar hardships, sharing her story in hopes of inspiring them to believe in themselves the way she had come to believe in herself. One evening, as Jada sat in her office finishing up a report, she received a message from Jack. He had planned a weekend getaway for the two of them. They had been so caught up in their busy lives that they hadn't taken much time to themselves. She smiled at the thought. It felt right. They needed this, a break from the demands of work and the pressures of life. a chance to reconnect in a peaceful setting. The weekend arrived, and Jada found herself at a small lakeside cabin in the woods, the air crisp and clean, the only sound the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional bird call. It was the perfect escape, a serene and quiet place where the chaos of the outside world couldn't touch them. As they spent the weekend, hiking through the woods, cooking meals together, and talking about their hopes and dreams, Jada felt a peace settle inside her that she hadn't experienced in years. Being with Jack in this tranquil place reminded her of how far she had come. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and she was doing so with someone who genuinely cared about her, someone who respected her independence while also cherishing the bond they had built. One afternoon, while sitting by the lake, Jack turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Jada," he said, his voice steady, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you." Jada looked at him, her heart beating a little faster. She had always felt safe with him, but something in the way he said her name made her wonder what was coming. "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. Jack took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Her heart skipped a beat as he opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. It was delicate, with a small diamond that sparkled in the sunlight. "Jada, you've shown me what true strength and love really are," Jack said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've watched you grow, overcome so much, and I'm so proud of the woman you've become. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, walking beside you through whatever comes next." Jada's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this, hadn't prepared herself for this moment. But as she looked at the ring, and then back at Jack's face, she realized that everything in her life had led her to this point. The pain of her past, the heartache, the fear, it had all shaped her into the woman she was today. And now, she was ready for the next chapter. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, the word filled with all the emotion she had been holding inside. "Yes, I will." Jack's face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The moment felt surreal, but at the same time, it felt right. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where they would continue to face life's challenges together, side by side. As they embraced, Jada realized that the life she had once thought was over had only just begun, and with Jack by her side, she knew that she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that she had found the love and strength she had always deserved. The months after their engagement felt like a beautiful blur to Jada. She had stepped into a new phase of her life, one where every day brought new challenges and new opportunities. The weight of her past was no longer dragging her down. She had found peace within herself and had learned to embrace the love that Jack so freely offered her. As their wedding day approached, Jada couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had never envisioned her life in such a way, but now, with Jack by her side, everything felt right. They had worked together to plan a wedding that reflected their love and commitment to one another, and it was everything Jada had ever dreamed of. It wasn't extravagant, but it was meaningful. The ceremony was small, held in a cozy chapel just outside the city, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. As Jada stood in front of the mirror, dressed in her simple yet elegant wedding gown, she couldn't help but think back to the woman she used to be. The woman who had been broken, lost, and unsure of her place in the world. She had come so far, not just in finding love, but in finding herself. Jack had been there for her every step of the way, never pushing her, but always supporting her as she rebuilt her life. And now, here they were, about to begin their forever together. When Jada walked down the aisle, Jack's eyes lit up with pride, love, and admiration. She had never felt more beautiful, not because of the dress or the makeup, but because she had finally found the strength to be herself, to accept herself as she was. As they exchanged vows, Jada's heart swelled with emotion. She couldn't believe how far she had come, how much she had healed, and how much love she had found in the process. "I promise to love you, to support you, and to stand by you through all the challenges life brings," Jack said, his voice steady and full of emotion. "You are my everything, Jada. I will cherish you always." Jada's eyes filled with tears as she spoke her own vows. "I promise to trust you, to believe in us, and to always be there for you, no matter what," she said, her voice filled with conviction. You have shown me what true love is, and I will spend my life showing you how much I love you." As they exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife, Jada felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. The past was no longer a weight she carried. It had shaped her, yes, but it no longer defined her. Her future was with Jack, a future she had built with love, patience, and understanding. Their wedding day was a celebration of everything they had overcome, everything they had built together. As they left the chapel hand in hand, Jada felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with Jack by her side, she knew she could face anything. Together, they had already conquered so much. Their love was a testament to the strength they both had found in each other. And now, they were ready to take on the rest of their lives, side by side. The journey that had begun with pain, betrayal, and uncertainty had led them to this moment. A moment of pure joy, a moment that marked the beginning of their forever. Jada smiled as they walked out into the world, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together, they could handle anything life threw their way. Years passed, and with each year, Jada's life continued to flourish in ways she had once only dreamed of. Her love for Jack had only deepened, growing stronger with time. Their marriage had been filled with joy, laughter, and the occasional challenge, but they faced it all together, side by side. Jada had never thought she would experience such happiness after the heartbreak she had endured. But here she was, standing beside the man who had not only loved her through her darkest moments, but had also helped her rediscover her own strength. They had built a life together, a home filled with warmth, love, and the promise of a future that held endless possibilities. Jada's work at the nonprofit had flourished as well. She had risen to a position of influence within the organization, leading initiatives that made a tangible difference in the community. The woman who once felt lost and powerless was now a leader, someone others looked up to for inspiration and guidance. She had become a beacon of hope for others who had faced the same struggles she had. It wasn't always easy, but Jada had learned that she was capable of far more than she had ever believed. Jack, too, had found success in his career, and the two of them had become a powerful team, supporting each other in their professional lives as much as their personal ones. They had traveled the world together, sharing experiences that had brought them closer, and they had built a network of friends and colleagues who admired the strength of their bond. As they settled into their home one evening, Jada reflected on how much their lives had changed. She had never imagined that the woman she had once been, the one who had felt broken and alone, could become someone who was not only loved but respected, someone who had the power to change lives. The journey had been long, but it had led her to this moment of peace, of fulfillment. And it was all possible because she had allowed herself to believe in love again. Jack walked into the room, his smile warm as he took a seat beside her. "You look deep in thought," he said, his hand finding hers. Jada smiled, her heart swelling with affection for the man who had been her rock through it all. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," she said softly. "I never thought I could be this happy, Jack. But here we are, living the life we always wanted." Jack leaned in, kissing her forehead gently. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice filled with pride. "And we'll keep going together, no matter what." Jada nodded, knowing that Jack's words were more than just comforting. They were a promise. A promise that no matter what life threw their way, they would face it as a team, united in their love and commitment to each other. Looking out at the sunset, Jada felt a sense of peace settle over her. The future was full of endless possibilities, and she was no longer afraid to embrace it. She had found the love she never thought she deserved, and in doing so, she had found herself. And with Jack by her side, she knew there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Their story, once filled with pain and uncertainty, had become one of triumph, love, and hope for the future. The life they had built together was proof that even after the hardest struggles, there was always a way forward, always a chance for a new beginning.